I hope you enjoyed the conference so far, all the presentations and the party last night for those who joined it. I'm going to share with you today some information about detecting and hunting lateral movement. I will start with a brief statistic regarding the Mandiant entrant, regarding the attack dwell time. Then I will briefly walk you through the attack life cycle, and I will focus more on the lateral movement phase. Then I will share with you some information that we have about the tools used by the attackers in the lateral movement phase, and then how we can detect and how we can hunt this kind of attacker activity. Most of you are already familiar with the Mandiant Entrant Report, which contains data based on 12 months of forensic investigative findings, and each year we can find out what are the trends in terms of what the attackers are doing in the victim environment. And we can see that this year the median dwell time, so the time spent by the attackers in the victim organization until the breach is detected, has decreased from last year 101 days to 78 days. While the trend is good, so the time spent by the attackers in the victim organization until they are detected decreased, it's still a lot of time. It's more than 2 months in which the attacker is around the network and they are going towards their objectives. So how are the attacker doing this? We know that there is the initial reconnaissance phase where the attackers study the environment. Maybe they are looking at what public-facing servers are there. Can they exploit any vulnerability in them? Or they look around social media, they are trying to find out what employees they can target, what employees they can impersonate in order to obtain that initial access, the initial compromise. When they finally get access into the victim environment, then of course they have access, but they need to establish their foothold there. They will want to be able to return in that environment by installing different vectors. Then we get to this interesting phase, which oftentimes we overlook it. The attacker is in the network, but they still didn't reach their goal. Maybe they're after some financial information or they are some after user information, or just maybe they want to replace some data or destroy some data. For this, they will start escalating privileges on a system, or maybe they will, oftentimes they are trying to obtain valid user credentials, which they will then use to understand what other systems are there, what's the next system where they can move to in order to reach their final target. And this is a continuous cycle where they move on another station, they establish persistence there, and do it again and again until they reach their final goal and they complete their mission. What we are doing, I think it's also in Adriatics and in Balkans and maybe even in the entire EMEA, organizations are still mainly focused on this, in the left side. In the left side of the attack life cycle, we are still focused too much on trying to prevent the attacker getting in, but we are not focusing, okay, maybe the attacker is already there, so what can I do in this case? How can I see if the attacker is there? And this would help us decrease that 2 months, more than 2 months time of the attacker spending in this phase here. Maybe we will be able to kick them out a lot faster. So for the initial phase, we have FireEye email security, which is a great solution, is able to detect and block emails containing malicious attachments, malicious URLs. It's able to block credential phishing or impersonation attempts. We have, for the web user traffic, we have FireEye Network Security, which uses 4 different engines to protect the user traffic. And for attacks which are bypassing the email or network solution, we have FireEye Endpoint, or even for attacks which are originating at the endpoint. But you already know, and we kept saying this, and I'm sure that whenever you read some security magazines or at other different conferences, now we are all saying that we have very good solutions. We have good researchers, we are working on developing new detection and blocking techniques, but no one can guarantee that we will block 100% of the attacker attempts. And this is why we are also focusing on the detection and response part. So focusing on this phase of the attack life cycle, what we've seen, and we get this information from our FireEye Mandiant Incident Response Division and from FireEye Intelligence Division. We've seen attackers using built-in operating system tools like AT to schedule a task or schedule even remotely. We've seen AT command used also for privilege escalation. If maybe an attacker is able to obtain at some point administrator privileges, but they want to run a process which needs system privileges. Using AT, they can schedule the command, and when it will run that task, it will run with system privileges. So there are built-in tools constantly used by attackers. Remote desktop application just to get access into the workstation, or net utility to access file shares. We've seen them using PSExec a lot of times, and other REMCOM is similar to PSExec, or P-Link, which is similar to SSH utility. We've seen them also using custom tools for custom TCP tunneling tools, custom keystroke logging tools, or some customized remote desktop applications. And most of them are using tools like Mimikatz or ProcDump in order to obtain valid credentials. Some of them are not even trying to obtain valid credentials, are just using the hashes in the authentication process in order to obtain the access that they're after. So they're using tools that are easily available. And as Luke was saying in his keynote, although attackers are using, let's say, complex strategies, sometimes the tools that they are using are very simple and publicly available. Some concrete examples we have. So I took random APT groups. I went into the FireEye Intelligence portal and just got some information to put it here in the presentation. We have a Chinese APT group, which is after intellectual property. They mostly handle data theft. They use, again, custom PSExec. There was a situation in which they just killed the host-based antivirus, and they launched Mimikatz in order to grab the credential. In other situation, they replaced the SSH binary in order to obtain credentials when the users were logging in using SSH. Of course, the famous AT command to schedule commands on the system, on a remote system, remote desktop, and even native Microsoft SQL. APT39, an Iranian group, which is mostly after personal information. We see again and again the same publicly available tools. Of course, they are also using some custom tools, but they also make use of Mimikatz, probe dump, for example, again, PSExec and other known tools. Another example of an APT group using Mimikatz, probe dump, SSH, Gmod desktop. So as you see, again and again, simple tools. So now we have the following situation. We know that attackers might be in the network, but we also we are looking for a way to understand if they are in our network, or to detect this activity that they are doing after that they gain that initial foothold. So let's take, for example, this situation of privilege escalation, where attacker is using Mimikatz for credential harvesting on the compromised host. So now the question is, how do we know about this, since there's no actual malware? And I prepared 3 answers for this situation to detect Mimikatz. On one hand, FireEye endpoint security has what we call real-time indicator detection. It is constantly updated with indicators of compromise coming from our research team, and you can also import your own indicators of compromise. And in this case, we have an alert which is detecting Mimikatz. The alert was raised by this condition. It is an indicator of compromise received from Mandiant in order to detect Mimikatz. And it alerts on the process PowerShell using this Mimikatz in the request URL. So, this is something that we can have as a detection, but maybe we didn't have that detection and we want to search for the presence of Mimikatz in our environment. For this, we can use the enterprise search utility of FireEye endpoint security. So we perform a search where we are looking for all the URL requests made by the endpoint which have FireEye endpoint security solution, and they access an URL containing this. This is just a simple example of a search. Once we decide a situation and we want to look for something, using enterprise search we have many options and a lot of parameters to search what we're looking for. Now we can also detect lateral movement activity, including Mimikatz activity, using FireEye network security. Until now, most of you are already knew about how efficient FireEye network security is at protecting the web user traffic. So when when users are accessing web servers. Now, with the Smart Vision utility, we are also scanning, we are looking into the east-west traffic. And this is how we can have alerts like this, where we are alerting on Mimikatz activity. We provide information, okay, so what was detected, the source IP address, destination IP address, and even the payload of what was in the traffic. Another example regarding lateral movement this time. So we know, and we've seen earlier that according to Intel, we know that attackers use task scheduler for lateral movement. So how do we detect this in our environment? One option is to perform a search. In this example, I searched for the process name equals 80.exe, but this is not enough because there are also legitimate tasks scheduled on computers. So what I did, I was to group by process arguments. And what this does, especially when you have multiple systems, it will stack them nicely. And those tasks which run only on few systems, they will bring, because you will see that some tasks are only running on 1 or 2 systems, while some tasks are running on multiple systems, as they are supposed to. So in this case, this is an example of AT command used maliciously. So here, using AT, we can schedule a task to run a reverse shell. Another way of detecting this is using FireEye network security, so the smart vision module, which is inspecting the east-west traffic. We have here an alert where we detected on suspicious remote scheduled task activity. We can also see the two events which are related to this alert. So one of the events here, this one, request for pipe over SMB, and then adding the job. And we can also see some information regarding the payload. We have even more information available in this alert, but this was not the purpose of the presentation, to go deeper into smart vision. It was just to show you that we can detect, and we provide also information regarding the alert. Another example for lateral movement, and we saw earlier that according to the intel that we have, attackers use PSXZ for lateral movement, and then the question is, on what system is PSXZ being used? Using the enterprise search functionality of FireEye endpoint security, we can perform a simple search like process argument contains PSXZ, and we can see the whole PSXZ argument. But there are also situations where the attackers are using some tools and after that they delete them. In case of PSXZ, in order to use it on the system, you have to accept the user license agreement, and this will modify the registry. So our best bet to try to see if PSXZ was used on a system is to try to search for that registry, which is modified when accepting the user license agreement. So in this case, what we can do is to perform a search when the registry key full path contains what we know that it should contain in case of PSXZ presence, and we also indicate it in what registry path to search for. So we can then find the proof that PSXZ was present on that system. With FireEye network security, we can also detect this kind of activity. And here is an example of an alert where it is alerting on sysinternal's PSXZ activity. And we also have the events which are related to it. So one of them is EXC, right over SMB, and we have the PSXZ service over SMB protocol. Another example, another situation is when the attacker was able to obtain valid credentials. And of course, then the natural question is, were there events from this user on another system, or on what other system did this user log on? And here again, we have multiple possibilities to search for this. One search that I think it's useful. So I search for the username containing administrator. It can be also equals, and I group them by process name. This will return the process is run by the user administrator, and it will also tell us on how many hosts. And having it like this, it's easily to just then sort based on the number of hosts, and you can at some point check maybe there are some suspicious processes running only on some specific hosts. Another option is to just search again the same condition, searching after the username but this time I want to see on what machines did that user connect. We have the canvases. Another example of lateral movement is we just want a simple search. We want to understand what SMB traffic was from workstation to workstation. And again, a simple search. We are searching for remote port 445, and we want to display the local IP address and remote IP address. The search options are many. There are a lot of parameters that can be searched and also options to provide that answer to sort them. And it's also possible to perform searches. On one hand, just you doing some in the GUI, in the graphical user interface, but you can also use some API scripts to perform more complex searches and even some algorithms. What we also know is that attackers are installing a service in the system in order to maintain their presence on a system once they got access to it. And how can we detect that? How can we search for that? We can perform, in this case, I search for all the service names, so it will return all the service names if they don't equal to null. And I group them by process argument and service name. And this helps us because we see some services that are running only on a few hosts. We can group them by on how many hosts they are running on. And in this case, we can find a service which is actually a PowerShell launching an obfuscator command. FireEye network security is also able to detect this kind of behavior, and in this case we have an alert showing us that a remote service was launched, and we can also have the details regarding this alert. What my goal for today was in this very short time frame to make you also, let's say, not to make you, but maybe to inspire you to focus a bit more on the right part of the attack lifecycle, not focusing only on the detection part or the blocking the attacker in, and also try to think of maybe the attacker is already in there. So what can I do about it? I also hope that you're a bit more interested in finding out how you can use more our solutions for this. And someone asked me at some point, but okay, we will take that solution. However, isn't it too complicated? And from my point of view, when I first started working with FireEye endpoint security and I saw all the searching options, that I was, okay, but I don't know what to do with it. And indeed, it's not that kind of process that you just take the tool and you start clicking around and you do the magic. It takes some time, but I think that it's worth to invest a bit of time. And we are not talking about months. We are talking about a person focusing on understanding this process, on what happens when the attacker is in the network and what they are doing. And there are a lot of trainings for this. There are books, there are blogs regarding incident response. Or there is also the possibility of having some experts doing this, like personally at FireEye we have managed defense. But you can also do this with your own resources. It's just something that takes a bit more time than we have email security. You put it, you configure, and it works. when we want to go a bit further and we want to track the attackers in our networks, we need to have the proper tools, and we can provide those tools to you. And we need to start being a bit more curious and open to learn exactly what they're doing there. So this is what I prepared for you today. I thank you very much, and if there are any questions. So it seems that the information was perfect, and you understood everything. Again, I thank you very much, and if you want to try to discover together how we can better use this kind of investigations tools in your environment, just let us know, and we'll try to help.